Minutes to 8. Now, we mentioned some ago. Here's a question for you. Do we need to learn to live with flooding rather than to try and control it? Some researchers, and indeed people in Cumbria who've been flooded, think we do. Karen Morley-Chesworth, who lives in Appleby, was flooded during Storm Desmond, and since then she's installed floodgates and changed her flooring and furniture to make them more flood resilient. And when Storm Kira hit at the weekend, she moved most of her belongings out of the path of the floodwater. BBC Radio Cumbria's John Bonus was with her when she went to assess the damage.
Well, we're just coming through the backyard now and down some steps and in to the back of the house.
That's amazing, because when we left there was 5 inches of water and now it's just like a slight puddle, which is unbelievable. Absolutely amazing, because last time it was up to above the work surfaces and there was just stuff floating around, like all the music out on the piano stool, and we had a freestanding fridge freezer that nearly landed on somebody because it lifted and just crashed to the ground. So there was stuff everywhere.
Just walking across the floor, yes.
Yeah, there's a little puddle.
Can we just go through to the hallway?
Yeah, sure. Oh, that sounds a bit more dramatic.
Now we're in here and it's a little deeper. It's maybe
a centimetre.
And there's looks like your dining table, and with various things piled on top of it.
With a piano on top, yeah. It really does show that the resilience measures, if you put them in place, it should help, because last time our insurance bill was over £48,000 and it took us 8 months to come back. I'd say more 8 days than 8 months this time. So we can't stop the flooding. We've just got to learn to live with it in a different way, maybe.
People who are lucky enough to live in an area that doesn't tend to flood might wonder, if this is going to happen to you every few years, are you committed to definitely staying here?
I don't think we could sell it, for one thing. But the other thing is, it's a nice place to live. Communities that flood are different to other communities. They're really tight-knit. If I could move the house, I would. But this was our first test, and maybe we have found a way of living with it.
Karen Morley-Chesworth from Appleby speaking to BBC Radio Cumbria's John Bonus. While someone else who keeps a regular check on these flooding incidents in Cumbria is Dr Neil Entwistle. He's a reader in river science at the University of Salford. You're on BBC Radio Cumbria, Neil. Good morning to you. You carry out research about how to reduce the impact of flooding. In terms of the rainfall levels we've had, what did you make of the areas that were affected this time around?
Well, I think one thing that's really interesting about the flooding that we've just had is that it's come on the back of a series of wet weather, which means our rivers have responded really quite quickly. And across all of Cumbria and Lancashire, a lot of the rivers rose to their bankful and over bankful levels really quite quickly. And that's something that our research has been looking into, that the flow speeds are far too fast, which is pushing water down into these flood-prone areas really quickly. And that a lot of the sediment production is going to keep on coming down from the catchment. So we have to really think about our natural flood management and the way in which we manage that, but also think about the way we naturally manage the sediment that's coming down that river system as well.
Glenridding and Carlisle are usually some of the worst affected areas. They seem to have avoided it at the weekend. Why do you think that is?
Well, again, that's a really good example. If we look at Glenridding, it looks as though from the gauging station that actually had its highest flow ever. And I think that's testament to the amount of work that the Environment Agency are doing with their sustainable approach to flood risk management. And they're looking at how you can manage an area and how you can really improve the flood defences. And the fact that Glenridding stood up to those big flows really is important to take on board and learn the lessons from that is really good practice, and that's why monitoring is really quite important, so we can educate the next generation, because they're the ones that are going to have to deal with the changing climate that we're currently in now.
Yet areas, as we've just heard, like Appleby, they continue to bear the brunt. Is enough work being done on the River Eden?
I can totally see how people on the ground might not see that there's enough work going on, but we're very much in the infancy of a lot of these measures that are being developed, implemented, and our researchers and a lot of other universities' research are feeding directly into the Environment Agency and to ensure that these that these processes are sped up, and that there's a lot more local initiatives that get funded and that get carried out, and that buy-in from those communities, like the example that we've just heard then from Appleby, is really quite important. I think something else just to take note is that since 1815, there's now been 68 flood events in Appleby. which is almost one in every 4 years that there's an overbank flow in Appleby. So maybe we do have to start thinking that we can't divorce a river from its floodplain, so we have to learn to live with it whilst we are trying to use all these natural flood management and natural sediment management approaches.
Some people listening to this as well on the same subject, Neil, may question why we still hear about housing developments on floodplains. I mean, should councils be doing more to just stop that actually happening in the first place?
I think that's a very difficult question, because if you take Lincolnshire, 93% of houses are built on a floodplain in Lincolnshire, but 95% of Lincolnshire is a floodplain. So it's a very difficult question to answer. We're an island, unfortunately, and we need more houses, and those houses have to be built somewhere. So there's two sides to that coin, and it is a very difficult balance to strike.
We talk about the council, about the Environment Agency being held to account over the work that they do, the flood protection work. Finally, how much responsibility do we as homeowners need to take when it comes to protecting ourselves?
I think that's something that just came out of the last lady at Appleby. These communities really start to work together and help the vulnerable people within that community. And for a certain extent, to try and protect each other's property as well as your own property with these removable flood defences is really quite important. One thing that came out of Storm Desmond around the country was a lot of new flood forums and flood communities, and people getting together and understanding the way in which rivers work a little bit more, working with universities, working with the Environment Agency, to try and understand how the Environment Agency put these things into practice, and how university research is actually helping all of these communities to try and tackle the onslaught of all these different storms. There's another storm coming in now that's potentially going to have quite a significant amount of rainfall as well.
OK, Neil, thank you. That's Dr. Neil Entwistle from the University of Salford. Storm Dennis, of course, coming up the weekend. Everything I've read, which I will just say, everything I've read from meteorologists and what have you say that there are going to be strong winds, there will be heavy rain. The meteorologists don't think it's going to be as severe as Kira, though, which we had last weekend. So just to say that. Right, it's BBC Radio Cumbria. Good morning. It's, where are we? We are 2 minutes to 8. Let's see how the roads and trains are shaping up. Simon Yaxley with an update for you right now.